The pool pump had been running for exactly 6 minutes when Margaret Holloway appeared at my back gate, her clipboard already out, and that practiced frown deepening the lines around her mouth. "Mr. Chen," she called over the fence, not bothering to knock. "That pump is in violation." I set down my coffee and walked across the patio, the Arizona sun already brutal at 8:30 in the morning. "It's my regular maintenance cycle, Margaret. Same time I've run it for 3 years. New regulations," she said, tapping her pen against the clipboard. "Pool equipment can only operate between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. You should have received the notice." "I didn't receive anything," I said, keeping my voice level, despite the heat creeping up my neck. "And that makes no sense. Running pumps during peak heat damages the equipment." "Not my problem," she was already writing. "First violation is a warning. Second is $200. Third is 500 plus a hearing." "Margaret, this is ridiculous. Every pool professional will tell you." "The board voted unanimously," she interrupted, already turning away. "Check your spam folder for the notice." I watched her march down the alley between our houses, her white sneakers slapping against the concrete. 3 houses down, she stopped at the Johnsons' gate. Through the chain link, I could see her pointing at something in their yard. My phone buzzed. Tom Johnson. "She just cited us for a bird feeder." "A bird feeder." I went inside and opened my laptop, searching through 2 weeks of emails. Nothing from the HOA. I checked spam, trash, everything. Then I logged into the HOA portal we were all required to use. Under announcements, dated yesterday, new pool equipment, hours, effective immediately. Yesterday, I screenshot everything and started a new folder on my desktop labeled HOA harassment. Something told me I'd be needing it. The next morning, I deliberately waited until 10:01 a.m. to start the pool pump. I was sitting at my home office desk, headphones on for a video call with my development team, when movement in my peripheral vision caught my attention. Margaret was in my backyard. Not at the gate, inside my backyard, walking around my pool with her phone out, taking pictures. "Hold on, guys," I told my team, muting myself. I rushed outside. "Whoa, what are you doing on my property?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "Inspection. Your pool water is 2 inches below regulation level. You can't just walk into my backyard. That's trespassing." "Suretic HA bylaws, section 12.3, she recited. "Board members have right of inspection with reasonable notice." "What notice? You didn't give any notice." "Posted on the community board at the mailboxes yesterday evening." She aimed her phone at my pool equipment. "Is that rust on your filter housing? Get out of my yard now. Rust is a safety violation. That's $300. She was typing on her phone as she walked slowly toward the gate. "Have a nice day, Mr. Chen." My hands were shaking as I went back inside. I unmuted my call. "Sorry, everyone. Dealing with a situation here." "Everything okay, Daniel?" my manager asked. "HOA president just walked into my backyard while I was on this call." "Dude, that's not legal," one of my developers said. "My brother's a lawyer. Want his number?" "Maybe. Let me document everything first." After the call, I drove to the community mailboxes. The bulletin board had exactly one notice, water damaged, and dated 3 months ago, about holiday decorations. I took pictures, then knocked on Tom Johnson's door. "Daniel, thank God," Tom said, ushering me in. His wife Jennifer was at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. "Look at this." The papers were violation notices. 17 of them, all from the last 2 weeks. Bird feeder. Grass height measured at 3.1 inches instead of the maximum 3 inches. Visible trash can from street on trash day. Car parked facing the wrong direction in their own driveway. 17. I sat down heavily. "That's insane." "It gets worse," Jennifer said. She pulled up her laptop. "I've been tracking who gets violations. It's not random." The spreadsheet she showed me made my stomach turn. Every house that had voted against Margaret's special assessment last year, the one for beautification that would have cost each home $8,000, had received multiple violations in the past month. Every house that supported her had received none. "She's targeting us," Tom said. "Everyone who opposed her." "We need to call an emergency meeting," I said. "Get enough signatures to—" "We tried," Jennifer interrupted. "She changed the rules. Now we need 75% of homeowners to call a meeting, not just 25% like before." "When did that change?" "Board meeting last month. The one she moved to Tuesday afternoon when everyone was at work." My phone rang. It was my elderly neighbor, Robert Kim. "Daniel, I just got a letter. They're fining me $1,000 for a brown spot on my lawn. $1,000, I'm on a fixed income. I can't—" His voice cracked. I'll be right over, Mr. Kim. I spent the next 2 hours going door to door. The stories were all the same. The Martinezes were fined for a Halloween decoration in August, a forgotten window cling their 5-year-old had put up. Sarah Williams, the single mom in Unit 47, got hit with $300 for her kids' bikes being visible from the street, even though they were on her porch. The Nguyens received 5 violations in 5 days, all for different things that had been present for years without issue. But the houses on the other side of the development, Margaret's supporters, nothing. Dave Patterson had a boat parked in his driveway for 6 months. No violation. Linda Stewart's grass was dead brown. No violation. Margaret's own house had paint peeling from the trim. Definitely no violation. That evening, I was grilling dinner when I heard voices from Margaret's yard. She was on her patio with Brad Simmons, the HOA treasurer, and Carol Vance, the secretary. Should have the votes by September, Margaret was saying. Once we hit them with enough fines, they'll be desperate to sell. Genius, Brad laughed. Property values will tank for a month. My investor group buys them up. Then we reverse all the crazy rules. Everyone makes money, Carol added, and these problem homeowners are gone. I almost dropped my spatula. I pulled out my phone and started recording, but they'd moved inside. Still, I had enough. The next day brought a certified letter. 3 violations: pool water level rust on equipment, and now excessive noise during business hours from my work calls. Total fines $800 due in 30 days, or they'd place a lien on my property. I called the number my developer had given me. His brother James Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, listened to my story with occasional uh-huhs and I sees. First question, James said. Do you have cameras, Sonor? Just a Ring doorbell. Get more. Cover your whole property. Second request, all HOA meeting minutes and financial records. You're entitled to them under Arizona law. Third, document everything. Every interaction, every violation, every conversation. What about the trespassing? File a police report. Won't go anywhere, but it creates a paper trail. And Daniel, start organizing your neighbors. You're going to need numbers. I installed cameras that afternoon, 1 covering the backyard, 1 on each side of the house, 1 overlooking the driveway. The installation tech, a guy named Marcus, shook his head as he worked. 4th house in this neighborhood I've done this week, he said. Everyone's talking about that HOA lady. Margaret, that's the one. Heard she tried to find someone for the color of their doormat inside their screen porch. That evening, I created a Facebook group, Saguaro Estates HOA Accountability. Within 3 hours, 62 homeowners had joined. The stories poured in. Margaret had been systematically targeting anyone who questioned her authority for over a year, but the past month had been an all-out assault. Then Jennifer Johnson posted something that made everyone pause. Has anyone actually seen the HOA's bank statements lately? The silence in the comments was deafening. Tom typed, now that you mention it, we haven't had a financial report in 6 months. Brad just keeps saying everything's fine. Someone else added. I private messaged Jennifer. Can you pull the financial records James mentioned? Already submitted the request. Margaret has 5 business days to comply. 3 days later, Margaret was back at my gate, but this time she wasn't alone. A man in a polo shirt with code enforcement embroidered on it stood beside her. Mr. Chen, Margaret called out, saccharine sweet. Officer Martinez needs to inspect your property. I reported several safety violations. Based on what? I asked, not opening the gate. Officer Martinez looked uncomfortable. Ma'am reported exposed electrical wiring and structural damage to your pool equipment. There's no exposed wiring. You can see the pool from here. He peered through the gate. I don't see anything obvious, but I need to inspect if there's been a complaint. Do you have a warrant? Don't need one for exterior safety inspections if there's probable cause. What probable cause? Her word. Martinez shifted his weight. Sir, I can come back with a warrant if needed, but that escalates things. I unlocked the gate. Fine, but I'm recording this. Margaret tried to follow, but Martinez stopped her. Just me, ma'am. You wait here. The inspection took 5 minutes. Martinez found nothing, obviously, because there was nothing to find. As he was leaving, he pulled me aside. Between you and me, this is the 4th bogus call from her this week. We're documenting everything, too. Margaret's face was red when Martinez told her there were no violations. You must have missed something. The rust, surface rust on a 3-year-old filter housing isn't a code violation, ma'am. Don't call us again unless there's an actual safety issue. After they left, I posted the ring footage to our Facebook group. The comments exploded. But Margaret wasn't done. The next morning, I woke to find a boot on my car, in my own driveway, a bright yellow boot with a notice, unauthorized vehicle, removal pending. I called the police immediately. Officer Chen actually related to James this time. His cousin arrived within 20 minutes. She can't boot a car on private property, Officer Chen said, taking pictures. That's theft and vandalism. Do you want to press charges? What I want is this boot off so I can get to work. He called a locksmith while I documented everything. Margaret appeared within minutes of the locksmith's arrival. That's HOA property, she screamed. You're destroying HOA property. Ma'am, Officer Chen said calmly, you illegally immobilized a vehicle on private property. You can either provide the key now, or I'm arresting you for false imprisonment of property. That's not a real charge, Armand. You want to test me, you're a euro. She stormed off. The locksmith had the boot off in 3 minutes. Keep this, he said, handing me the boot. Evidence. That afternoon, Jennifer got the financial records. We gathered at her house, me, Tom, Jennifer, the Kims, the Nguyens, and Sarah Williams. What we found made us all sick. $800,000. Jennifer said, her voice barely above a whisper. The reserve fund should have $800,000. There's $12,000 left. Where did it go? Sarah asked. Jennifer pulled up transaction records. Payments to Pinnacle Property Management, that's Brad's company. $50,000 here, $30,000 there, all for consulting and maintenance oversight. This is embezzlement, Tom said. It gets worse. Jennifer showed us another document. Margaret paid herself a salary, $20,000 last year. The HOA president position is volunteer. Unpaid. We need a lawyer, and I said, a real one, not just advice. I know someone, Mr. Kim said quietly. My son is a prosecutor, white-collar crime. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. Margaret didn't appear at my gate. No new violations appeared on the portal. It felt like the calm before a storm. Then Thursday night around 10 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through the Ring app, I could see it was Dave Patterson, one of Margaret's supporters. He looked nervous. Daniel, can we talk? I opened the door but didn't invite him in. What's up, Dave? I wanted to warn you. Margaret's planning something. She called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. She's going to pass a special assessment, $15,000 per house for emergency infrastructure repairs. She can't do that without a community vote. She says she can, emergency powers. And if people can't pay within 60 days, the HOA can foreclose. My blood ran cold. Dave, why are you telling me this? He looked away. Because I found out my house is on the list too. I questioned one of her decisions last month, just once. He handed me a flash drive. Board meeting recordings from the last year. I've been recording them for my own notes. Margaret doesn't know. But, Dave, this is thank you. I'm moving out anyway, can't stand it anymore. But you guys don't deserve this. I stayed up all night going through the recordings. Margaret's voice clear as day laying out her plan. Brad negotiating kickbacks. Carol joking about cleaning out the riffraff. And worse, much worse. They'd been using HOA funds to pay for personal expenses. Margaret's kitchen remodel. Brad's vacation to Cabo. Carol's daughter's wedding. At 6:45 a.m., I was at the community center with 43 other homeowners. Margaret's face when she walked in was priceless. This is a closed board meeting, she stammered. Arizona Revised Statutes, Title 33. Chapter 9. I said, reading from my phone. All HOA board meetings must be open to members, except for specific litigation or employee matters. This is an emergency. About infrastructure, Tom interrupted. That's not a permitted closed session topic. She tried to proceed anyway, but Sarah Williams was live streaming on Facebook. Go ahead, Margaret. Tell everyone about the $15,000 assessment. How did you, that's confidential board information? Is it? I held up my phone, the recording clearly audible. 15,000 should be enough to force out at least half of them. Brad went pale. You can't record board meetings without permission. Actually, Mr. Kim's son had arrived in full suit despite the early hour. Arizona is a one-party consent state, and my client Dave Patterson, who was present at these meetings, consented to his own recordings. Dave's not here, Carol said weakly. Dave walked in. Yes, I am, and I resigned from the board effective immediately. The next 2 hours were chaos. Margaret tried to adjourn. We wouldn't let her. She threatened to call the police. We encouraged her to do so. Brad attempted to leave. Tom and three other neighbors stood in front of the door, not threatening, just standing. "You can't hold us hostage," Carol shrieked. "No one's holding you," Jennifer said calmly. "But if you leave, we're calling this meeting to order without you. We have quorum with the homeowners present." Finally, Officer Chen arrived. Margaret had actually called the police. He listened to both sides, reviewed the statutes I showed him, and made his determination. "This appears to be a civil matter, but the homeowners have a right to attend any board meeting." "Ma'am," he addressed Margaret, "if you're conducting HOA business, they can be here." Margaret was trapped. If she stayed, she had to face us. If she left, we'd conduct the meeting without her. "Fine," she spat. "Meeting adjourned." "Motion to continue the meeting," I said loudly. Seconds shouted 5 people at once. "You can't win on Per the bylaws," Jennifer read from her laptop. "If a board member abandons a meeting in progress, present homeowners may vote to continue with those willing to participate." Margaret sat back down defeated. What followed was methodical destruction. Jennifer presented the financial records. I played the recordings. Arizona's wiretapping laws didn't apply, since Dave was a party to the conversations. Mr. Kim's son explained the criminal implications. Sarah live-streamed everything. "Motion to recall all current board members," Tom announced. "Second," I said. "All in favor." 43 hands shot up. "You need 75%, Margaret shouted. "Of those present," Jennifer corrected. "You changed that rule yourself. Remember last month's meeting?" The recall passed unanimously. Motion to elect temporary board members pending a full community election. I continued. We elected Jennifer as president, Tom as treasurer, and Mr. Kim as secretary. Their first act was to reverse every rule change from the past year. Their second was to freeze all HOA bank accounts pending a forensic audit. Margaret stood up, shaking with rage. "You'll hear from my lawyer." "Good," Mr. Kim's son said, handing her his card. "Have them call me. I'll be representing the HOA in recovering the stolen funds." "Stolen? How dare? Brid, would you prefer embezzled, misappropriated? I have a thesaurus in my car." She stormed out, Brad and Carol trailing behind. The room erupted in applause, but Jennifer quickly calmed everyone down. "This isn't over," she warned. "They're going to fight this." She was right. The next morning, every homeowner who'd attended the meeting received a letter from law offices of Brennan and Associates threatening legal action for defamation, illegal recording, and conspiracy to commit fraud. James Chen laughed when I showed him. "Brennan and Associates, they're ambulance chasers. This is a scare tactic." He drafted a response that basically told them to pound sand, legally speaking. But Margaret wasn't relying just on lawyers. The following Monday, I came home to find my water shut off. City Utility said there was a report of a major leak. It took 3 hours to get it turned back on. Tuesday, someone called animal control saying I had a dangerous dog. I don't have a dog. Wednesday, the IRS called about irregularities in my tax returns. Someone had reported me for fraud. Each incident took hours to resolve. Each one was anonymous, but we all knew. "She's trying to exhaust us," Tom said at our strategy meeting. "Make us give up." "Then we don't give up," Sarah said simply. "We fight every single battle." The forensic accountant Jennifer hired found more than we'd imagined. $900,000 diverted over 3 years. Fake vendor payments. Inflated maintenance costs where Margaret's brother-in-law did the work. HOA credit cards used for personal purchases. "This is criminal," the accountant said. "You need to contact the Attorney General." We did. We also contacted the local news. Channel 12 sent a reporter, a young woman named Jessica, who seemed hungry for the story. The interviews took all day. Mr. Kim broke down on camera talking about the $1,000 fine when he was living on Social Security. Sarah talked about choosing between HOA fines and her kids' school supplies. I showed them the boot, the violations, the recordings. But the most powerful moment was when Robert Kim's grandson, stationed overseas, sent a video message. "My grandfather served this country for 20 years. Now he's being terrorized by someone who thinks a brown patch of grass is more important than human dignity." The story aired Thursday night. By Friday morning, Margaret's house had a for sale sign. But she had one more card to play. That afternoon, process servers appeared at 12 houses, including mine. She was suing us individually for harassment, stalking, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages, $50,000 per household. "It's a slap suit," James explained. "Strategic lawsuit against public participation. She's trying to bankrupt you into silence." "Can she win?" "Not a chance. but defending it could cost each of you thousands. That's when Dave Patterson became our hero for the second time. He called me that evening. Daniel, I kept more than just recordings. I have emails, text messages. Margaret specifically discussing using lawsuits to, and I quote, bleed them dry until they submit. Dave, you beautiful bastard. There's more. Brad's investor group, I have their emails too. They were planning to buy 8 houses, flip them, and make about $2 million in profit. We filed our countersuit the next week. RICO violations, racketeering, criminal conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, the works. The Attorney General's office announced their investigation the same day. Margaret tried to continue her harassment campaign, but it was falling apart. The city warned her about false reports. The IRS confirmed no issues with my taxes and suggested I file a complaint about fraudulent reporting. Animal Control blacklisted her number. Then came the November HOA meeting, the first official one under the new board. 112 homeowners attended out of 150 total. Margaret showed up with her lawyer trying to claim the board change was illegal. According to what statute? Jennifer asked calmly. The lawyer fumbled with his papers. The bylaws clearly state which section. Jennifer had the bylaws memorized by now. Section. I'll need to review. While you're reviewing, Tom interjected, let's discuss the forensic audit results. The numbers on the screen made everyone gasp. $918,000 missing, 27 fraudulent vendor payments, 43 personal charges on HOA credit cards. Furthermore, Jennifer continued, we've discovered Ms. Holloway has been receiving kickbacks from the towing company she contracted. Every boot placed, every car towed, she got 20%. Margaret stood up. Those are lies. I'll sue every one of you. You already are, I pointed out. How's that working out? Her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. She sat back down. The vote to pursue criminal charges passed 111-1. Margaret voted against, obviously. 2 weeks later, the arrests happened. I was working from home when the police cars pulled up to Margaret's house. Through my window, I watched them lead her out in handcuffs. Brad was arrested at his office. Carol turned herself in. The story made the evening news again. This time it went national. HOA President's Reign of Terror ends in arrests, was the CNN headline. My phone didn't stop ringing for days. Reporters, other HOA victims, even a documentary filmmaker. The criminal trial took 8 months. Margaret was convicted on 14 counts of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, full restitution. Brad got 2 years. Carol got probation and community service. The civil trial was even better. The SLAPP suit was dismissed with prejudice. Our countersuit resulted in a judgment of $1.2 million paid by Margaret's homeowner's insurance before they dropped her. The HOA recovered most of the stolen funds. But the best part was the day Margaret's house sale closed. She'd been forced to sell to pay legal fees and restitution. The buyer, Sarah Williams, the single mom Margaret had harassed relentlessly. Sarah had inherited some money from an aunt and decided there was no better revenge than Margaret knowing a problem homeowner was living in her perfect house. I'm painting the door purple, Sarah told me, grinning, and putting up the biggest, tackiest garden gnome I can find. The new board under Jennifer's leadership reversed every arbitrary rule. Pool pumps could run whenever needed. Bird feeders were explicitly allowed. Grass height. As long as it wasn't a jungle, nobody cared. The fines from Margaret's regime were all forgiven. But we kept some rules. The ones about not harassing neighbors, about board transparency, about requiring actual notice for any violations. And we added one. Any board member who entered a property without written permission would be immediately removed and banned from future positions. At the 1-year anniversary party, yes, we threw a party, Tom gave a speech. We learned something important this year. A community isn't about perfect lawns or invisible trash cans. It's about neighbors looking out for each other. It's about standing up to bullies even when they have clipboards and fake authority. It's about remembering that we're all just trying to live our lives in peace. Mr. Kim raised his beer. To peace. To peace, we all echoed. I was cleaning up afterward when Jennifer approached me. Daniel, we want you to run for the board next term. Me, I'm the guy who started all the trouble. No, she corrected. You're the guy who ended it. Think about it. A month later, I was elected treasurer with 92% of the vote. My first act was to implement online voting so people didn't have to attend meetings to have their voices heard. My second was to create a transparent monthly financial report that went to every homeowner. The neighborhood changed after that. People actually talked to each other. Kids played in the streets again. We had block parties. The couple who bought Brad's house started a community garden. The new owners of Carol's Place organized movie nights in the park. But the biggest change was the attitude. Nobody lived in fear anymore. Nobody worried about arbitrary fines or surprise inspections. We'd learned that bullies with clipboards were still just bullies, and the only way to stop them was to stand together. One evening, about 18 months after everything started, I was sitting on my patio when I heard splashing from the house behind mine. Margaret's old house, now Sarah's. Her kids were playing in the pool, their laughter echoing through the neighborhood. "Mr. Chen," Sarah's daughter called out, "watch me do a cannonball." The splash was enormous water spraying over the fence into my yard. Once upon a time, that would have been a violation. Now it was just kids being kids. "Nice one," I called back. Sarah appeared at the fence. "Sorry about the water." "Don't be. Sounds like they're having fun." "They are. For the first time since we moved to Arizona, they actually are." She paused. "Did you hear Margaret tried to become HOA president at her new neighborhood in Scottsdale?" "How'd that go?" "Someone Googled her, found all the news stories. She withdrew her candidacy the next day." I couldn't help but laugh. The internet never forgets. "Nope. Hey, we're grilling tomorrow if you want to come over. Tom and Jennifer are coming. The Kims too." "Sounds great." As the sun set, I thought about everything that had happened. The stress, the anger, the fear, it had all been worth it. We'd saved our neighborhood from someone who'd forgotten that power was supposed to serve the community, not terrorize it. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave Patterson. He'd moved to Flagstaff but stayed in touch. "Saw a woman with a clipboard measuring someone's grass height. Had PTSD flashbacks." I texted back, "Did you warn them?" "Absolutely. Showed them the news articles." She left pretty quickly after that. The next morning, I was up early running my pool pump at 6 a.m. just because I could. No clipboard appeared at my gate. No violations showed up on the portal. Just the quiet hum of machinery and the promise of another peaceful day. At the board meeting that week, we had 12 attendees, a normal number, now that people weren't terrified. We approved a new playground funded from the recovered embezzlement money. We voted to reduce dues by 15% since we weren't paying fake vendors anymore. We discussed the spring festival planning. "Any new violations to report?" Jennifer asked as part of the agenda. "Just one," Tom said, trying to keep a straight face. "Someone has a really ugly garden gnome in their front yard." Sarah laughed. "That's not a violation anymore." "I know. Just wanted to go on record that it's truly hideous." "Thank you," Sarah said proudly. "I work hard to maintain that level of tackiness." After the meeting, I walked home past the community mailboxes. The bulletin board had actual useful information, now upcoming events, maintenance schedules, community resources. No threatening notices, no arbitrary rule changes. A new neighbor was there, looking confused at a welcome packet. "Just moved in?" I asked. "Yesterday. I'm trying to understand all these HOA rules." "Don't worry, Mart," I assured him. "We're a pretty reasonable bunch now. Just don't harass your neighbors or steal money and you'll be fine." He laughed nervously. "That's a pretty low bar." "You'd be surprised. I'm Daniel, by the way. Unit 38. Marcus, Unit 15. Welcome to the neighborhood, Marcus. Fair warning, Sarah, and Unit 52 has the world's ugliest garden gnome, but we've all learned to love it." Good to know." As I walked away, I heard him muttering, "Seems like there's a story there." Brother, you have no idea, I thought. The final legal resolution came 2 years after that first pool pump confrontation. Margaret's last appeal was denied. She'd serve her full sentence, pay complete restitution, and have a permanent criminal record. The news barely made a ripple in our neighborhood anymore. We'd moved on. The recovered funds paid for a complete pool renovation at the community center, new roofs for the most elderly residents who couldn't afford them, and a scholarship fund for local kids. We named it the Standing Together Scholarship, Jennifer's idea. At the dedication ceremony, Mr. Kim spoke. "This money was stolen from us through fear and intimidation. Now it returns to us as hope and opportunity. That's justice." Channel 12 did a follow-up story. Jessica, the reporter who'd covered the original scandal, interviewed me by the newly renovated pool. "What would you say to other homeowners facing similar situations?" she asked. "Document everything. Know your rights. And most importantly, don't face it alone. Bullies count on isolation. When neighbors stand together, bullies lose." Any regrets about how things played out? I thought about it. I regret that it took us so long to fight back. We suffered in silence for months because we thought we were alone. If I could change anything, I'd have knocked on doors sooner. What about Margaret Holloway? Any message for her? I hope she learns from this. Power without accountability corrupts. HOAs should serve their communities, not rule them. The segment aired that night. My phone exploded with messages from HOA victims across the country. Some wanted advice, others just wanted to share their stories. I answered what I could, always with the same message: you're not alone and you're not powerless. One message stood out. It was from a lawyer in Colorado who was putting together a class action against predatory HOA management companies. Your story inspired 12 of my clients to come forward, she wrote. Thank you for being public about this. Life in Saguaro. Estates settled into a new normal. Board meetings became social events with cookies and coffee. Violations became actually rare and always legitimate, like the time someone's contractor left debris blocking the road for 3 days. Even then, the response was a polite conversation, not an immediate fine. We instituted an annual Worst Garden Gnome contest in Sarah's honor. She won 3 years running until Tom found a gnome riding a flamingo that finally dethroned her. The trophy, a gloriously awful golden gnome, became our most coveted neighborhood prize. The documentary filmmaker did eventually make a film. The HOA Tyrant premiered at a local film festival. Watching Margaret on the big screen, seeing her smug certainty as she described her plan to clean up the neighborhood, was surreal. The audience actually booed. But the most satisfying moment came later, in a quiet conversation with Robert Kim. We were sitting in his backyard looking at his now lush green lawn. I almost moved, he admitted. After that $1,000 fine, I thought maybe I was too old to fight. But you didn't. No. You knocked on my door. You cared. That mattered. He smiled. My grandson says I'm a hero now. Imagine that. 82 years old and I'm finally a hero. You always were, Mr. Kim. It just took the rest of us a while to catch up. The following spring, 5 years after Margaret's arrest, I decided not to run for another board term. Jennifer was stepping down too, passing the torch to newer residents who'd never experienced the bad times but understood their importance. At my last board meeting as treasurer, I presented the final financial report. The HOA had a healthy reserve, lower dues than most neighborhoods, and zero pending litigation. Any old business? The new president asked. Just one thing, I said. I pulled out the yellow boot that had been on my car that morning 4 years ago. I motioned that we mount this in the community center with a plaque, "Never again." The motion passed unanimously. After the meeting, I walked home the long way past the community garden, where tomatoes were starting to ripen, past the playground, where kids were laughing, past Sarah's house, where that beautiful, hideous gnome stood guard. My phone rang. It was Dave Patterson. Hey, Daniel, you'll never guess what's happening in my new neighborhood. Aching HOA problems. The president just tried to find someone for a wind chime. A wind chime, Daniel. Want me to send you the playbook? Already printing the news articles about Margaret. Thanks for paving the way. As I hung up, I realized that was the real victory. Not just saving our neighborhood, but showing others it could be done. Every petty tyrant with a clipboard should know that homeowners aren't sheep to be fleeced. We're neighbors, and when pushed too far, we push back. The sun was setting as I reached my house. I could hear pool pumps running throughout the neighborhood at 7 p.m., which would have been a violation once upon a time. Now it was just the sound of freedom. I sat on my patio with a beer, watching the desert sky turn orange and pink. Tomorrow there would be work calls, errands, normal life. But tonight I was just grateful for the peace we'd fought so hard to win. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Look at the HOA Facebook group. I opened it to find dozens of posts, photos from throughout our 5-year journey. The emergency meeting where we took back control. The day Margaret was arrested. Sarah painting her door purple. The first peaceful board meeting. The garden gnome contest. Kids playing in the pool. Someone had created a video montage set to "We Are the Champions." It was cheesy and perfect. The last image was a screenshot of a text exchange that had become legendary in our neighborhood. Margaret, your grass is 3.1 inches. Tom, your prison sentence is 3 years. I laughed, probably too loud. But who was going to file a noise complaint? Those days were over. A new message appeared in the group from Marcus, the neighbor who'd moved in recently. I just want to say, after reading all this history, I'm proud to be part of this community. You all showed that regular people can stand up to corruption and win. That's inspiring. Sarah replied, "Just wait until you see the gnome contest. It's gloriously ridiculous." "Can't wait," Marcus wrote back. I closed my phone and leaned back, remembering something my grandmother used to say: bullies are just cowards with an audience. Take away their power, and all you have left is noise. Margaret had been all noise in the end. Sound and fury signifying nothing but her own greed and insecurity. We'd taken away her power not through violence or hatred, but through unity documentation and the simple act of saying no more. The stars were coming out now, brilliant in the clear desert sky. Somewhere in Phoenix, Margaret was in a cell, probably still convinced she was the victim. Brad was likely plotting his next scam. Carol was doing community service, hopefully learning something about actual community. But here in Saguaro Estates, we were free. Free to run our pool pumps when needed. Free to have bird feeders and garden gnomes. Free to let our grass grow an extra tenth of an inch. Free to live without fear of a knock on the door and a clipboard full of violations. Most importantly, we were free because we'd freed ourselves. No one was coming to save us. We'd had to save ourselves one signature at a time, one meeting at a time, one neighbor at a time. The pool pump clicked off its cycle complete. The neighborhood settled into evening quiet, punctuated by the distant laughter of children and the clink of dishes from dinner cleanup. Normal sounds of normal life made precious by their absence during the dark times. I thought about all the HOAs across the country, all the Margaret Holloways drunk on their tiny kingdoms of power. They should all know what we learned here. Push people too far, and they'll push back. Unite them in suffering, and they'll unite in resistance. Tomorrow, someone somewhere would get an arbitrary fine for something ridiculous. But maybe they'd remember our story. Maybe they'd knock on their neighbor's door. Maybe they'd start their own folder labeled HOA harassment. Maybe they'd win. As I headed inside, I noticed something new on Sarah's lawn. A second garden gnome, this one, riding a unicorn. I sent her a text escalating for next year's contest. She replied immediately, "Tom doesn't stand a chance." I smiled. This was what victory looked like. Not grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but neighbors joking about garden gnomes, kids playing freely, and the blessed absence of clipboards at gates. The HOA still existed, of course. It had to. But now it existed for us, not against us. It maintained the common areas, organized community events, and handled actual problems with actual solutions. Boring, functional, and democratic exactly as it should be. I pulled up the HOA portal one last time before bed. No violations, no warnings, no special assessments. Just a reminder about the spring festival and a note that volunteers were needed for the planning committee. I signed up. After everything we'd been through, celebrating together was the least I could do. The story could end there with peace restored and justice served. But life doesn't wrap up neatly like a movie. There were echoes, ripples that continued spreading. 6 months after my last board meeting, I got a call from a reporter at the Wall Street Journal. They were doing a piece on HOA reform legislation inspired by cases like ours. Arizona was considering new laws limiting HOA power, requiring transparency, and making it easier for homeowners to fight back. "Your case has been cited in 3 different state legislatures," the reporter told me. "You've become something of a symbol." "We just wanted to live in peace," I said. Sometimes that's the most radical act of all. The article ran with the headline, "The Revolt of Saguaro Estates: How One Neighborhood Changed HOA Law." It featured a photo of Sarah's garden gnomes with the caption, "Symbols of Resistance." Sarah framed that caption. The legislation passed in Arizona and sparked similar bills in 12 other states. The Saguaro Estates Law, as it became known, required open financial records, limited fine amounts, banned HOAs from entering property without written consent, and made it a felony to use HOA positions for personal gain. Margaret, still in prison, tried to claim credit for inspiring positive change. The internet destroyed her for that, but honestly, we'd all moved on. She was yesterday's nightmare. We were focused on tomorrow's possibilities. The 5-year anniversary of the Take-Back meeting was approaching. Jennifer suggested we do something special. "Like what?" Tom asked at the planning meeting. "A documentary screening. Invite the whole neighborhood, maybe some of the lawyers and reporters who helped us." "I have a better idea," Sarah said. "Let's invite other HOAs. Show them how we did it. Make it a workshop." That's how the Taking Back Your Neighborhood Symposium was born. We expected maybe 30 people. 200 showed up. They came from across Arizona, some from neighboring states, all with horror stories, all seeking hope. I gave the opening speech standing in the same community center where Margaret had tried to impose her $15,000 assessment. 5 years ago in this room, 43 scared homeowners stood up to 3 bullies with boards titles. We were terrified. We were angry. But most importantly, we were together. I looked out at the sea of faces, seeing our past selves in their worried expressions. Today, you're not alone. Today, you learn to fight back. We ran workshops on documentation legal rights, organizing neighbors dealing with retaliation. James Chen flew in from California to explain the legal strategies. The forensic accountant showed how to spot financial fraud. Jessica from Channel 12 talked about getting media attention. But the most powerful session was the survivor panel. Mr. Kim, now 87, spoke about finding courage in his 80s. Sarah talked about protecting your family while fighting back. Tom explained how to build coalition among neighbors. Fear is their only weapon, Jennifer concluded. Once you realize that once you stand together, despite the fear they've already lost. A woman from Tucson raised her hand. Our president is threatening to put liens on our houses if we don't pay for his swimming pool renovation. Document it, I said. Get your neighbors together, file a complaint with the Attorney General, and call the news. But what if he retaliates? Sarah stood up. He will, they always do. But retaliation is evidence. It's proof that you're winning. By the end of the day, we'd help form 5 new homeowner coalitions. 3 HOA presidents were probably going to face recall votes. One was likely headed for criminal charges. As people were leaving, the woman from Tucson approached me. Thank you. I've been crying myself to sleep for months thinking I was powerless. You're not powerless. You never were. You just needed to know you weren't alone. She hugged me and I saw Margaret in my mind, not the tyrant with the clipboard, but the pathetic figure in handcuffs, all her power stripped away by ordinary people who'd simply had enough. That night, the old board me, Jennifer, Tom, and Mr. Kim had dinner at Sarah's house. Her kids were teenagers now, the pool incident, a distant memory. Did we change the world? Tom asked a few beers in. We changed our world, Jennifer said. That's enough. It's more than enough, Mr. Kim added. We showed that democracy works even at the smallest level, especially at the smallest level. Sarah raised her glass. To clipboard karma. We all laughed, clinking glasses. Outside, her garden gnome stood guard, protecting a neighborhood that had learned to protect itself. The truth is, every neighborhood has a Margaret Holloway. Sometimes they're HOA presidents. Sometimes they're coaches, PTA leaders, office managers. Small people who find a bit of power and let it corrupt them entirely. They count on good people being too polite, too busy, or too scared to fight back. But here's what I learned in those long months of battle. Bullies are remarkably fragile. Their power exists only as long as we allow it. The moment we say no, the moment we stand together, their elaborate facades crumble. Margaret thought she was building an empire. She was actually digging her own grave, one vindictive fine at a time. Every person she pushed became evidence against her. Every abuse of power became another nail in her legal coffin. Now, years later, Saguaro Estates is known for 2 things: the absolute worst garden gnomes in Arizona and the neighborhood that killed HOA tyranny. We'll take both as badges of honor. New residents get a welcome packet that includes the usual information: trash days, pool hours, local services. But it also includes a single page titled Your Rights, listing everything an HOA cannot do, every protection homeowners have, and ending with this line: you are not alone. Your neighbors have your back. Because that's the ultimate lesson of our story. Not the legal strategies or the documentation tactics, though those matter. The lesson is that a community is only as strong as its willingness to protect its most vulnerable members. When Mr. Kim on a fixed income was fined $1,000 for a brown patch of grass, we could have looked away. When Sarah was harassed for her kids' bikes, we could have stayed silent. But we didn't. We knocked on doors. We showed up. We stood together. And we won. The Garden Gnome contest is next week. Sarah's got a new entry, a gnome riding a dragon holding a tiny clipboard that says denied. It's horrifying and perfect. Tom's counter is a gnome dressed as a lawyer with a briefcase full of tiny violation notices. I'm judging this year, and honestly, I have no idea how to choose. They're both magnificent disasters, monuments to our hard-won freedom to have terrible taste. But that's the point. In a free neighborhood, you can have ugly gnomes. You can run your pool pump at dawn. You can have visible bicycles and bird feeders and grass that's 3.2 inches tall. You can live. As I finish writing this story, I can hear pool pumps running at various houses, each on their own schedule, their own needs. No uniformity, no compliance, just neighbors living their lives as they see fit the way it always should have been. Margaret's house. Sarah's house now has purple doors, wine chimes, and 4 garden gnomes. It's visible from the main road into the neighborhood, a daily reminder that tyrants fall, justice prevails, and sometimes the best revenge is living well in the very house where oppression was planned. If you're reading this and facing your own Margaret Holloway, know this: you can win. It will be hard. It will be exhausting. They will try to break you with fines and threats and legal papers, but you can win. Document everything. Find your allies. Know your rights. Contact the media. Don't back down. And remember, they're not fighting you because you're wrong. They're fighting because you're right, and that terrifies them. Every bully with a clipboard fears the day their victims unite. Make that day today. In Saguaro Estates, we made it August 15th at 7:00 a.m. in a community center that smelled like old coffee and rebellion. The date Margaret Holloway's empire fell. The day 43 homeowners said enough. The day we took back our neighborhood. Your day is coming too. I promise you that. And when it does, when you're standing in your own community center or town hall or conference room facing down your own Margaret Holloway, remember us. Remember Mr. Kim finding courage at 82. Remember Sarah protecting her children. Remember Tom and Jennifer turning paperwork into weapons. Remember Dave Patterson choosing conscience over comfort. Remember that every tyrant's reign ends the same way, with ordinary people standing up and saying one word: no. This is a dramatized story inspired by common HOA disputes, not legal advice.